Alexander is 4 days old. He was born 3 months too early, weighing just a bit more than a kilo. His parents have been sitting for hours by the incubator, caressing their son. How can we improve the medical care for these premature babies? That is the central question in the work of the Swedish pediatrician, Professor Hugo Lagercrantz.
Actually, a preterm or a premature baby is not really a sick baby. It's a baby who can be healthy, but the problem is that the baby is in the wrong environment.
Professor Lagercrantz is head of the neonatology intensive care unit in the Astrid Lindgren Children's Department of the Karolinska Hospital in Stockholm. He is working at the edge of life, as a scientist and a doctor. He is convinced we can find solutions for the problems of these little children by studying the natural birth process.
Just before birth, the fetus, weeks before birth, the normal fetus makes some preparation. There's an acceleration of lung maturation, and we discovered a few years ago that the normal babies, when they are born in a natural way, they secrete enormous amounts of stress hormones, and I don't think during any circumstance in life you have such a high levels of stress hormones as during birth.
Lagercrantz believes the stress of being born is essential for the survival of a baby outside the womb.
Vad skönt.
In the beginning we thought this was not very good for the baby, but then we found out that this is very important for the adaptation of the newborn. That makes the normal baby well prepared for the life outside the womb. But if a baby is born preterm, it's not prepared.
He studied this stress, analysing, for instance, the adrenaline concentration in blood samples of newborn babies.
Stress can be good or bad. I mean, also an adult can. It's good for an adult if he wants to or she wants to do something really important to be a little stressed. I think that improves the capacity, and it's the same for a baby.
Lagercrantz discovered the surge of stress hormones promotes the onset of breathing after birth and ensures a rich supply of blood goes to the heart and brain. But he thinks more research is necessary to unveil the mystery of birth.
We still don't know exactly what triggers birth, and I think still lots of questions about this neonatal adaptation.
Hugo Lagercrantz has been studying the birth process for some years, but for him it will never become routine.
I think when you see a baby being born, it's an enormous event, even if I've seen several. I think you can't leave the room where you are touched.
Lagercrantz is 51. He is a father himself. He has 3 children, a daughter and 2 sons born in the 70s. His youngest son is studying medicine. Lagercrantz's wife, Rose, is a writer of children's books. Most of these books are illustrated by their daughter, Rebecca.
You would believe that Hugo's mission in life are the babies. But I do believe his mission in life is his family. And the first thing he has to do, after having worked in the hospital, is to run home very quickly because he has to make the shopping. He lives 5 lives in 1 life. He's so quick, that man. You wouldn't believe it. When I come in the morning to buy a packet of milk or something like that, she gives me the disc. Yesterday he made it in 1 minute. He's very, very rapid. Today he made it in 30 seconds. I think his big fortune is his family. I think he really gets refreshed in the family.
We discuss a lot. Sweden used to be in the frontier in Europe, both in pediatrics and culture for children, children's books, and both my wife and I are involved in this.
Hugo Lagercrantz studied medicine in the 70s, but it took some years before he took up what became his passion, pediatrics.
My father was a pediatrician and I didn't want to do the same thing. So I thought of a lot of other things except pediatrics. But then I had to lecture on breathing, on respiration, and then the most interesting thing was the onset of breathing at birth. So then I became very interested of the physiology of the newborn infant and the fetus. And that's how it started.
Hugo Lagercrantz is now leading the Stockholm Neonatal Project, an internationally esteemed study of very low birth weight infants. He is involved in the selection procedure for the Nobel Prize in Medicine and has invaluable contacts with the international scientific community. His research is interesting for international comparisons because the Swedish philosophy on neonatal care is special. Lagercrantz and his team have explicitly opted for a more natural approach in supporting the children. In the Astrid Lindgren Children's Department of the Karolinska Hospital, doctors are, for instance, restrictive in the use of mechanical ventilation. They prefer techniques to assist the baby's inhalation and exhalation, allowing lungs and muscles to grow.
I think we are not as aggressive maybe as in North America. I think this is a tradition of medicine in Sweden in general. I don't think it's just only neonatal care. We trust the nature much more. For example, we give the mother's milk. We avoid formula, we avoid the artificial things. We try to simulate the environment in the womb. I mean, we cover the incubators with blankets, and we try to reduce the noise, and we try to protect some of these infants in that room by trying to decrease the sensory input, because we know at this stage the brain is in a critical phase of development.
Professor Lagercrantz is initiating a series of new research projects on neonatal adaptation, combining his scientific work with patient care.
Now at present I would like to see what's happening really at a cellular level, what's starting this process, what's the triggering mechanism. Is it the squeezing and the squashing of the fetus when it's coming out, or is it the change of oxygen environment? Is it something else? There are several theories.
Lagercrantz hopes he can find answers with his research to improve the treatment for premature babies and for the newborn who have problems adapting to life outside the womb.
I think it's very important to be at a ward or see the patients and then go to the laboratory and solve the questions. So it's kind of bedside research. I don't want only to do the basic science, but I want to apply it also in clinical practice. Because I have contact with the parents and the children, I think that makes science much more meaningful than just solving a more theoretical problem.
Lagercrantz is always busy. He works long days at the hospital. Apart from his work as a doctor and as a researcher, Lagercrantz is the editor-in-chief of Pediatric Research, a leading magazine on pediatrics.
I received a fax today from the United States office, and they have a review that they would like for one of our editors to look at.
Okay, so maybe I can have a look myself.
Lagercrantz works at least 18 to 19 hours a day. He seems to have boundless energy.
He can go on till 1 o'clock in the night, and he doesn't have to sleep very much, which I think is lucky for him. And every day he says, "Oh, nothing has been done." So it should be 48 hours a day and not 24 for him.
I think if you're doing research, you must do it nearly full time and use also all the free time.
I have a great admiration for him, both as a scientist but also as a man who cares about what he is doing. He cares for the humans. He cares for the small children, the prematurely born, and he cares very much.
When I wake up, mostly he's gone. I think sometimes he goes away 6 o'clock, sometimes 7 o'clock in the morning. And he always puts a cup of coffee on my table at the bed, and then he's gone.
A new baby has arrived on the ward, David. He was born by caesarean section. A few hours after the birth, the pediatricians diagnosed he was not doing very well. He had severe breathing problems. They decided to admit him to the neonatal ward. According to Professor Lagercrantz, David is a good example of the problems on neonatal adaptation. He didn't have the stress of a natural birth.
If you are delivered by elective cesarean section without labor, then you get a lot of problems, as we have seen in this baby today. He was born 2 weeks too early, and you could see that this baby had a lot of breathing problems. We can avoid some of the problems, and now, for example, it's recommended that you should wait with a cesarean section until the mother is in labor, because the labor starts all these processes.
In David's case, doctors decided to use new advanced breathing support techniques. Oxygen is administered to his lungs through small tubes in his nose. David controls the breathing himself, and his lungs get a chance to develop. In the Karolinska Hospital, there is a special ward for women who are at risk delivering their baby too early. If possible, Lagercrantz visits the women to reassure them about the care the baby will receive when it is born. Lagercrantz has daily contacts with the obstetricians to get all the necessary information on the baby's condition in the womb. If it's impossible to keep the baby in the best place there is, the womb, medication is given, for example, to promote the maturation of the lungs. Eric and his parents arrive at the main entrance of the Karolinska Hospital. Professor Lagercrantz and his team monitor the premature children while they are growing up. This way they collect valuable information on the improvements they have achieved over the years.
I think it's very important if you're working in this field that you follow them up. I think it's very important to get this feedback. And also I think it's nice. It's rewarding. For example, this boy we saw, I mean, he was really bad, and I mean, this was an in vitro fertilization, and I mean, this baby was really wanted, and he came out, his birth weight was 700 grams, and he was very sick, and he was in the ward for half a year nearly. And to see now that he's developing fine, and I think that's great.
Ironically, a lot of preterm-born children are the product of advances in modern technology. Hormonal stimulation of the ovaries and in vitro fertilization frequently result in preterm birth. In Sweden nowadays, 1 out of every 1,000 infants is born very premature, and the number is increasing. Luckily today, those children do have a good chance of survival.
Around 1970, 10% of babies with a birth weight below 1,000 grams survived. Today, 75% in some good units survives.
Eric had a very difficult start. For Lagercrantz, he is a living proof of the benefits of the more natural approach to preterm babies.
More than 90% of these very small babies, they develop normally, essentially normally. So, I mean, it's a quite small percentage who develop handicap. And in general, our incidence of severe handicap is about 2%, which is a lower figure than in some other countries. And then we have some babies, maybe 5%, who are have a little delayed development. Of course, we don't know exactly what will happen with some of these preterm infants when they become adults, from how they develop emotionally or intellectually, but we believe that the prognosis in general is fairly good.
For Lagercrantz, the most intriguing question now is to understand the development of the brain of the preterm infant.
Our goal is to discharge healthy infants or children who will develop normally, and I think we have to understand the brain so we can give them good care in the neonatal ward, a good brain care in the neonatal ward. I think it's fascinating how the brain is developing. I think it's completely wrong to say that the brain is like a computer. It's more like a jungle, as one neuroscientist said. And what's going on is that this jungle becomes organized when you are learning things. And this is really a challenge to understand this. Oh, now he sleeps. Hey, hey. Dreaming, I think. Already preterm baby can fix. I mean, when they are looking on something, they, if they are interested, they look a little longer than if they are not interested. So in that way, you can study the how the baby perceives the environment. Doesn't like all the tubes, but he gets oxygen here, and then that's for food. So I think this is the most interesting field, how the brain is developing, particularly during this period, and what's the difference being outside the womb and inside the womb.
Whilst Lagercrantz and his team are continuously working on the improvement of the medical care, the most important thing for Lagercrantz seems to be the human side of neonatal care. Professor Lagercrantz is, for instance, very aware of the emotional problems faced by the parents of premature babies.
så att säga första dygn.
Of course we need all these monitors etc. but we should try to hide them in some way because I think that frightens the parents and they feel that it disturbs the contact with the baby and it gets disturbed when it's beeping and the alarms etc. I think these machines are of course necessary, but we should try to, at least the parents must get a feeling that the baby is in the middle or should be in the center.
For Lagercrantz, it is important to put the parents at ease. In his opinion, even the design of the ward counts.
Now, this is a boat for the children, so it's mainly for the siblings because this is a neonatal ward, so when they are waiting for their parents, when they are visiting the baby, they can play here, and this is my contribution in this ship, the neonatal ward, with 3 incubators.
It's a mystery, isn't it? His mother, she said, when he was young and she still was alive, she said to me, you know, Hugo, he's like a deep well. Sometimes you whisper into it, and sometimes there will be an answer.
Ta lite från början då. Ganska bort. Nej, vi tar lite lugnt här så känner vi repar. Okej.
I would really say he's the happiest man I met. I saw. I don't know so many men. But he's the most happy man I met. But I don't think he's aware of it.
He's a very caring person, but it doesn't impair his curiosity and his wish to find solutions.
The Astrid Lindgren Children's Department in the Karolinska Hospital is a centre for fundamental scientific research. Whilst Lagercrantz and his colleagues are discussing the development of new treatments, there is a small party at the ward. Lucas, born 14 weeks too early, today reached the weight of exactly 1 kilo. His weight at birth was 600 grams. On the daily round, the doctors are informed about this important milestone. For Lagercrantz, resuscitating smaller and smaller babies is not the goal. He is a little worried about doctors who are trying to break records and keeping very preterm babies alive.
I think we have reached limit now. This limit has moved downwards all the time since after the war. But the main aim is that the babies should leave this ward in a good condition and that they will have a good prognosis. I think that's very important. The aim is not to resuscitate the smallest baby or break any records in that respect. The record is to get as many babies healthy as possible.